we are, hoping to bring eternal sunshine into your day. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Corey.
And this week we'll be discussing the brand new album from none other than Ariana Grande, Eternal Sunshine. Um, and if you're wondering, yes, this is actually inspired by the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a concept album. This is her first concept album, so that's really cool to dive into, I think.
And you got a chance to did you get a chance to finally see it this week?
I did. It was original. I'll give it that.
Definitely one of the more out there Jim Carrey movies, but one of the more out there movies in a intellectual sense, so to
Oh
speak.
yeah. I'm not sure I'd watch it again, but it was but I'm glad I did because it did help me understand the album more. And well, our singer is a big Jim Carrey fan, so it makes sense.
Yeah, she even got to do a few guest appearances on the Kidding Show with him. So they're best of friends.
Oh yeah, best of friends. Well, she needs some friends because she she's made some enemies in her time as a A-list pop star. Um especially lately. So, I I will say this now. I was not expecting this album. Nobody was. So, in case you haven't heard already, Ariana Grande has been filming the movie adaptation of the wildly successful musical Wicked. She will be playing Glinda, and that's been a bit of a polarizing casting choice. But it's what they're doing, so I'm gonna wait to see the movie to reserve judgment. That's just me.
It's tough. I mean, her voice fits the original Glinda voice for me. Does her act is her acting going to be able to roll? We'll see.
Oh,
Um,
actually, the criticism is of her singing often for people.
I didn't mean her. I didn't even get to the singing part. I was just saying like
Yeah.
her like very demure voice fits the Glinda high pitched jam. Or maybe I'm you know what I'm thinking more of her fake voice on her old Nickelodeon series fits more
Oh,
of the
I
Glinda
I
stuff.
never watched Victorious. I never did.
She had a high pitched voice that she would do for her character on that, which is reminiscent of Glinda. But we'll see. You're right. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment till I see it. But so she had actually said there won't be a new album until Wicked is finished because it was such a priority for her. But funny enough, there was a screenwriters strike, and because of that, she got to work in the studio and came out with this album. She finished it pretty quickly at the end of last year. And it came on the heels of some big controversy in her personal life. So during the filming of this movie, it seemed that Ariana at some point started hooking up with her co-star Ethan Slater, who was best known for playing SpongeBob SquarePants on Broadway. And this has been controversial because they may or may not have both been married when this started, and Ethan Slater is not only married, he has a newborn kid. So Ariana Grande has been labeled a homewrecker by many, and they have their PR people said this split was like their split was amicable, but his wife has said otherwise and has dissed Ariana. And this isn't the first time Ariana's been the other woman. It's been a pattern with her. So yeah, would I
I don't.
trust her?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't trust her.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and act like I am a authority on her dealings with the gentleman, but I can say that I'd have to be super living under a rock not to know that she has a tumultuous past.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, she seems like a lover. She seems like a lover and a dreamer. If I'm giving her a silver lining playbook, but
That's
yeah,
yeah, that's one way of putting it, but there's yeah, the lead up of this, there has been controversy, and more so than before. I think the tides really turned on her more so in the lead up to this. But in a way, I think that makes it more interesting to hear, well, what's her take on all of this? And in the past, she has given us her take on things throughout her music. And it's been an effective form of expression for her. And so, I mean, yeah, people are looking for answers here. Do they get them? We'll dive into that. But
That's always been a draw for me, is this sort of like bad girl. I won't even say bad girl, but this sort of harder edged female that I'm not expecting just by looks from her. In her music, with
nah,
her honesty, in her day to day, she's got some rough edges, which I don't expect, and that's been a pull from me, just in curiosity about her throughout her career.
yeah, and she has a very well put together image with like the high ponytail. She's always dressed to the nines, always looks very nice. But there is this tumultuousness about her personal life that I do think has helped make her interesting to a lot of the general public.
Yeah.
Um, for better or for worse. And
Yeah, for real.
yeah. And I'm not, as for her as a person, I'm not sure she seems like that great of a person, but I have enjoyed her music in the past. And I didn't love the last album, Positions. I really liked Sweetener and Thank You Next when those came out. Positions didn't do it for me. I felt like it was just kind of the same sound, nothing new to it. And then she was pretty quiet for a while outside of a couple weekend remixes. We didn't hear a ton from her. But now she has made her official return to pop music a bit sooner than expected. But she came
Yeah.
with plenty of tea for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, after first listen to this one, I had to go back and get more of a mindset of who she is as an artist, so I could make a critical decision as I went through here, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But this one, I had to make sure I'm with you. The last release before here, I thought was pretty boring, pretty monotone, even though it has melody and does its thing, but it just, there's a lot of repetitiveness on that album as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a new, not 100% new thing, but it was definitely something I needed to do here, because I don't think I could make a really educated, critical decision on this album without knowing where she came from.
Yeah. And this is a bit of a return to earlier sounds for her. So the main producers on this album are Max Martin and Ilya. And neither of these producers were part of the Positions album. And they did some songs on both Sweetener and Thank You Next, but they were not the dominant collaborators on there by any means. She hasn't done this many songs with them, well, probably ever on just one album, but really, this is her most straight pop album since 2016's Dangerous Woman. So that's where we're coming from here. And so far, the response has been pretty enthusiastic from fans and critics. They all seem to be really enjoying the album. It's got an 83 score on Metacritic. Rolling Stone called it an instant classic. Some are saying maybe it's her best album. Is it? We'll see. We'll get into that.
Yep, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it, and I say before we get into it, are we saying that this is a concept album or not?
I am, yes.
Yes,
At
based
least in
on Eternal
intent.
Sunshine and intent. Okay, because I mean, even she's quoted as it's sort of a concept album, so
I
I don't
think
want to
it
be
is.
too hard and strict on those parameters. But okay, I
Yeah,
wanted to see where you were on that.
I consider it one, and that, but not every concept is executed as well
Correct.
as we want it to be. Just
Agreed.
saying that in general, not as a precursor to my thoughts on the album.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
like I think we've seen really well executed concepts on this show. Like your folklores or renaissances, but we've also seen autumn variations, a bit more of a muddled concept
Heard.
in execution. So where will this fall? That's the question.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah. Uh, a lot of people have a lot of opinions on it already. So with that being said, I'm ready to get started on this bad boy.
Let's get at it.
Yeah, so it begins with our intro, parentheses, end of the world, which begins with the question, how do I know if I'm in the right relationship, which has been pointed out as really framing the album, which is a smart move for her. She's an expert, I guess, at this point of singing songs of love and loss and all that good stuff. This kind of short, sparse intro, but it does remind me a bit of the Raindrops and Angel Cried intro from Sweetener in a good way, because that was also a really strong introduction to a body of work. And I do think it plays into the current narrative surrounding her. So I think it's a solid minute and a half intro.
Yeah, we got these lo-fi vibes that we're going to see throughout the rest of the album, set across these strings that are really neat. It perfectly frames the album. I say perfectly because she doesn't leave us guessing at all here. She says, am I in the right relationship or not? And that's where this narrative starts. And it does its job. It does its job. Musically, it's not mind-blowing, but it's nice enough to get us warmed up here into the next track.
Yes, and our next track is our first full song, which is by a disco-influenced kiss-off to an ex, in this case, her ex-husband, Dalton Gomez, who is a luxury real estate agent who most of us had never heard of before he married Ariana Grande. Yeah, I really enjoy this. I said last week on our Chromatica episode, I really think she does these dance songs well. I think, again, kind of like the Mariah Carey comparison, she has a good voice for that sound, and she hasn't always done it, and I'm glad that she did it here. I think that the disco strings really fit her, and I like that we're getting her perspective on this, because so much of this media coverage has not focused on the fact that she got a divorce. It's very much focused on this man left his wife and his baby for Ariana Grande. Like, that's so much of what it is. And this does shed another light on it, rightly or wrongly. It does. And I think it's good to hear that.
Yeah, it's very upbeat for what it says. I see a lot, or in my opinion, we get a lot of this juxtaposition of these hardcore feelings / vibes and this bouncy pop. The orchestra hits are used early on in this track, and sometimes that screams plebeian, like that screams pedestrian for me as far as composition. Do they hit? They hit. It moves. It moves well. It moves in this beautiful disco feel. I love the bridge here. It's her overlay on her vocals are super strong, and she features really awesomely here. In an early part of the album, like right here, first track, real. She does well, and I dig it. This is a really cool way to get into this album.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm with you on that. And we're going to keep the train a rolling with our next song, which is Don't Want to Break Up Again, which Ariana called the hangover of Bye. It's a more mid-tempo kind of song about on-off relationship. What were you going to say?
I have so much to say about this track, but I'm glad to hear her say that it is the hangover of Bye for so many different reasons. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, based on her interviews about this album so far, I definitely think it's a concept album, whether even if she say that's only kind of. I absolutely feel all of this is intentional. And I mean, it's weird. It's obviously easy to infer it's about her marriage, even though she calls her marriage a situationship. That's a bit strange. But I mean, I think it's a solid tune. I don't like it as much as the previous one. It's not quite as musically dynamic, but I will say so far, I'm loving her vocals on the album. They are crystal clear. And the most common criticism of her singing before has been she does not enunciate well. And she was on Broadway. She should enunciate well. But it does seem like she worked on that to star in Wicked. And it's coming through in these vocals. And I'm loving it so far in terms of how her voice sounds.
Yeah, I'm with you. Her voice does sound great. Like I was saying in Bye, she's really featuring well. Outside of that normal criticism, I didn't touch on that, but that's where I was coming from on that. For this to be a hangover of Bye, in her own words, I'm going to pull back a little bit here because I've listened to this album over and over and over and over again, the same way we do every week. And not only does this track begin with a fade in, lo-fi, almost subdued fade in of Bye, but it's the same song melodically. And in my notes, I have like, am I going crazy? It's, please, I implore anyone, go back and forth to these songs, and it's the same. I can sing Bye over Don't Want to Break Up Again. I can sing Don't Want to Break Up Again over Bye without changing the key, without changing the feel. And in my notes, I have, is this use just to show this repeating thought that she's having? I'm not really sure why you would put two of the same song twice on this album if it's not for that. I like to hear that is this hangover sense of the thought in Bye, and I'm going to give a Silver Lining Playbook play here on. They used the same melody because of that. Outside of that, I was ready to tear this to shreds. I think I sort of still did. It doesn't play. It's the same freaking song. So it's very frustrating for me to see that repeat so early on in this album and just real no differentiating in between the two songs other than maybe the thought. It's tough, man. This track 3 for me could have been somewhere else on the album. It's not a terrible song, but it's the same song as the track before it. So I really had a problem with that.
That's a fair criticism, and I don't like it as much as the previous one. So I don't think you're incorrect about maybe this should have been elsewhere on the album.
Because that disco beat's pulled off, but we're literally the same place. I can't stress. I literally have in my notes, am I going crazy? It is a repeat. But if I'm going spotless, if I'm going like in contrast to the movie, I dig that. And that if that's a thinking piece here, but I have to ask myself too many questions to get to that. So in that sense, it doesn't stick the landing for me, you know? I have to be too unsure if that concept, maybe a bit of the muddled concept, as you were saying before.
In this case, maybe a bit so, but she's going farther on it with the next track, which is an interlude, Saturn Returns interlude, where we have this Saturn return phenomenon explained. It occurs at the age of 29, it sounds like, which makes sense because she just turned 30. So this is all inspired by recent events. Funnily enough, she said hers was uneventful, but she still used it for artistic inspiration, which I do respect a lot in terms of strengthening this concept. And I think that she does that here, even if there's nothing musically special about it, but I do think it strengthens what she's going for.
Yeah, we get another straightforward, I'm telling you exactly where the narrative is going from this sample, and I dig it. I'm not sure, I should know. I'm not sure if that's her voice or where it came from.
It's not her voice.
No, I heard. So, this sample here, straightforward, tells us what we're in for narratively and what she's feeling or this character's feeling musically. I'm with you. It has a neat little spooky outro that works right into Eternal, which I do find myself liking, but it's more of just like a set piece here to let us know exactly where we are.
Yeah, And it does get us to our title track, which is Eternal Sunshine. In this case, she is moving on from a relationship and wants to forget it, which is a direct reference to the film. And this one sounds like her ex cheated on her, based on these lyrics. And she gets some good digs in there, like, let you play me like Atari, hope you feel all right when you're in her. And she sings it in this really airy tone, which actually makes it cut deeper. So I really enjoyed this song. Even outside of the references to the movie, I really like what she's going for here, and I think she pulls it off.
Yeah, I dig it musically as well. I think she does a great job in it. I really like how she uses her voice here, and I'm with you on that. As far as the composition goes, I feel a bit trapped in this lo-fi loop. And after many listens, I have to really think. I don't have to think too much on this, and that's why I think this sticks the landing of being a perfect contrast or a perfect example of the movie here. We're using the Eternal Sunshine in the album title, but in this track, and really mimicking that feeling of mixed thoughts, not knowing what's real, trying to get rid of thoughts. So I dig it. It just musically, it's a little bit tough here. It harkens back to Buy and Don't Want to Break Up, but not in a sense that hardcore takes me out, in more of a relatable sense inside of this concept. It's a cool track. It's a cool track.
Yeah, I think it's the best one here so far, I would say.
I'm actually, I don't know. It's tough. It's that and Buy for me at this point. As far as like musically, what I like going on or what's going on inside of it as a full package, I think I have to take Buy over this so far. But I'm
Yes.
with you. It's a shining light inside of this first 5 tracks, so to speak.
Yeah, because we do have 8 more to go. No more interludes, but this, I was shocked at how short the album is. It's not even 40 minutes. I was
And
expecting a longer album.
me too. Me too. Maybe we are coming because we were coming off a Gaga, or like we're super. I'll speak for myself, but I think it rings true for both of us. We're super excited about going into all these new releases. There's this beautiful pent up, like, oh, what's going on? And then 35 minutes. I was sort of like, whoa, all right,
Yeah,
what we got?
it's definitely looking like the other ones we'll be doing will be longer than this one. So I'll give her points for being concise. I'll give her that though. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so track 6 is Supernatural, which Grande called the horniest song on the album. And I would say it's a sci-fi love song. And I really like the sound of it. We definitely hear a lot of Swedish pop influence, which is natural from Max Martin, but I think it really goes into greater overdrive here than on the previous songs. And I mean, I'm a fan of that sound, and I think it's effectively used here. And I think it helps create again, a similar, cohesive sound for the whole album. Even though this is a bit more twinkly, I guess you could say, in terms of its production. I don't know.
It's that production. It's that production that keeps me going back to this track, and I like this track. It does have that lo-fi intro here, but I'm not convinced that intro wasn't made with a sample from her vocals. At first, I thought she was mimicking this sample throughout, and I really love how she does it with her vocals here. But I think that this sample is actually a breakdown of those vocals that's just muddled and made to sound. Maybe it's just how many times I've listened to it over and over again, but I really enjoy it. It keeps me coming back and picking out pieces. It's and for this album, it's the gift that keeps on giving for me as far as musicality, and I dig it. This is really, it is twinkly, but there's a lot going on here, and it's a very complex composition. I dig this track a lot.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I think it's a good one too. It seems to already have been highlighted as a standout, and I agree with that completely. But we're going to get a bit more personal with the next track, which is True Story. Part of this song's demo leaked already, but she did redo it, and she called it a sister song to an unreleased song called Fantasize, which we'll discuss more in a moment here. This one definitely plays more so into the tabloid narrative that she's going for. And I mean, I'm glad that she goes into that because that is what the people want. Like, I'll play the bad girl if you want, but you gotta give her love. That's the big hook here is give me love. Not the best usage of that hook ever, but I like this song. I wouldn't say that I love it. And it's I don't know if it's quite as revealing as she thinks it is. And that is a bit of a criticism for me. I think in her best moments, she's a bit more emotionally honest than this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll start there. There's a lot of potatoes in this story, but there's not really any meat for me here. Where you think there is, but when you really listen to this and break it down, it's almost like the drama inside of it is composed, where I don't feel that in some of her other tracks where I feel she's really being genuine. This one ends up not being on that level as far as what she's exposing here or leaving herself exposed. So I agree with you there. I'm going to stick with the meat and potatoes here. There's not enough meat for this down tempo beat to hit hard enough and really do justice to this almost dirty, like 90s inspired beat. Like, I get a lot of TLC vibes here, but there's not ever any real meat in the composition that lets it hit. It just sort of feels like this song never finds itself to me. It never sticks its landing, as we keep saying. Yeah, so as far, it's not my favorite on this album at all. There's a personal little, the way that the Real World, I'm aging myself here, but I believe it was the first season of the Real World on MTV. Used to have, there was a country singing guy, and he would be like, "It's a true story" in the start of it, and her refrain, I can't separate those in my brain. I try to put that outside. It's not inside of the criticism that I said about it not being my favorite, but it's another one where I'm like, well, I guess she's 30, maybe she knows it, but I think it's stuck there for me.
It's as you said, it's definitely a 90s influence track, and it's not the only. We're really diving into the 90s influences, I think, at this point in the album. And for the next few songs, there's a solid, very 90s influence 4-song stretch, and that continues just in title alone with the next song, which is called The Boy Is Mine. This was originally conceived as the song Fantasize, which leaked, but she's here. She says she's going all in on the bad girl image, like, yeah, the boy is mine. In this case, SpongeBob, Ethan Slater. Who, by the way, it has been pointed out that Ethan Slater looks like her brother Frankie, and he actually does. So that's a little weird. I had to say it. That's really fucking weird. But your SpongeBob brother, man. Okay, Ari, but that boy is yours. And of course, a lot's going to be made of this immediately because it references a really iconic 90s duet. This is nowhere near as good as that song. Which is a deserved classic, in my opinion. I mean, it's fine, but it's just okay for me. Again, this is not emotionally honest. I feel like it feels like a front to get away from emotional honesty. And I expect better from her after what I heard on Sweetener and Thank You Next. This is not revealing to me at all. It's not even sassy enough for it to be a standout to me.
Nah, it's definitely not a standout for me. It's a full composition. As far as production value, it's polished and finished a lot more than a lot of the sounds that I get on this album. And her vocal range is good here, but aside of being titled "The Boy Is Mine" and immediately where my brain goes, I take myself out of that. It's just it doesn't feel real. I'm with you. Like it doesn't feel as real as the stuff we get. I was gonna save it for my summary of this album, but I'd like to talk about it a little bit here. After we get out of Supernatural, I really think the concept is gone, and I can't find many ways inside of the remaining tracks where it hits at all. We've changed styles into this 90s, like this 90s inspired beats. And now I feel like the real expose, so to speak, or, her being exposed and honest is a bit contrived. And I hate saying that, but so far, and not getting too far ahead of myself, I really feel like this concept is lost at this point.
I can see why you'd be saying it in terms of this song, but I'm not sure I agree with you when it comes to some of these later songs. But we'll get there when we get there.
Or
Because in the meantime, it's time for track 9, which was the lead single, actually. So I've had some time with this song. Yes, and question mark. This is pure 90s house influence. It was immediately compared to Madonna's Vogue a lot. It was even said to interpolate it. I wouldn't say it interpolates it, but influenced, yeah. And it also got comparisons to Renaissance and Break My Soul, which is, I guess, in keeping in the more contemporary example. But I like that sound, and I think it's well done here. And she is sassy on it, and I do think that she, especially during the bridge, gives a clap back to the critics like, yeah, why do you care about my body? Why do you care so much whose dick I ride? That's kind of a vulgar way of putting it. I actually don't love that line at all. I thought that was a little crass, but that's just me. But I do enjoy the song itself. I do think it has a good dance beat, and this one's definitely, I can tell she definitely is catering to her gay fan base with this one. It's very like, say that shit with your chest, and that's very, she's definitely going for a certain thing here, and I personally like it. And like I said, I think she does these dance tracks really well, and I enjoyed the song. It did debut at #1, but it's kind of free fallen a bit since then. It hasn't been her biggest hit at all. And it doesn't seem like people are connecting with it in the way she may have intended, or it may not give them the answers that they wanted, because she's basically saying, yeah, I have no regrets about any of this, which I don't think is playing well with everybody, but that's her prerogative, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that strengthens it is the fact that everybody's like, but she's saying it. Yes, and like, come on, yes, yep. The answer is yes. What else? What else you got going on? And I think that's strengthened by this diva. I'll say Madonna, but I'm more of a diva vibe here. Yeah, of course. I feel like it's impossible not to hear some Madonna here. I won't say interpolated, but it's definitely there. That aside, there is almost a minute of no vocal intro here that is really, really well done. This
Oh,
song
yeah.
hits, yeah, this song hits on all levels. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It divas it out inside the composition and inside the vocals. I love her play on the vocals throughout this song. This is, I tried to guess what were the singles my first listen through, and I had this as a single. And it's single worthy. It's single
Oh,
worthy.
yeah.
It's time after time coming back to it. I don't necessarily get extra little gifts, but I don't take anything away from it because it's just full. It's full, it's realized, and it's polished, and it's a really good sound. I dig this track.
Yeah. And it definitely succeeded in making me excited for the album after the disappointment of the last one for
Yeah, the
me.
first listen through, I was like, this is your intro. Like, put this up top towards the album. Now that I understand the concept and going through it, I say
Yeah.
no. I like where it's at. But it really has a good pump up vibe, and it's that polished that it's just there. It really it stands on its own, and that's why it's a single. But it's a really good track.
Yeah. And I don't know, did you see the video for this one?
No, I
Oh.
think I saw the intro. Are they doing the Snow Angels from Spotless Mind
No,
in the
that's
start of it?
another song.
Heard.
But this
No,
it but this video was I liked this video too. It was actually pretty directly influenced by Paula Abdul's video for Cold Hearted, which was a nice I
heard.
thought that was a very nice callback, and Paula Abdul approved it herself.
That's cool.
So I thought and that definitely added to the retro vibe of the whole song, and um, completes the package a bit for me. It's like we're going to give you some Madonna and some Paula. Pure
Yeah, man.
1990 here.
Heard.
But yeah, that video you reference is actually the video for the next track, the second single, We Can't Be Friends. Wait for Your Love. Definitely the most Swedish sounding Ace of Base track on this album. But it's a bit of a heartbreaker. It's a melancholy tune. Like, we can't be friends, but I'll wait for your love. And this is the emotional honesty that I've been waiting for, that vulnerable track that she can do so well. This is one of her finest recorded moments, period. And it just rides that 90s Swedish influence so well. And I do love the video. It does directly reference that film and just plays into what she's going for here and makes it clear. It also references 16 Candles at one point too. But I'm glad this was the second single. This was a very smart choice, and I hope it does well. I really think it has the potential to, and people seem to be loving it so far. And she performed it on SNL this past weekend. So
Nice. Yeah, Swedish house vibes is that you can't escape the Swedish style in this, but I love it. I love the way it's done. I love how the intro beat is so far, like so distant sonically, and it grows closer as we get like this almost dreamlike crescendo right into this robot pop Swedish house run. I dig it. The composition is really I use the word genius for the first time this podcast. It's really genius in the way it's put together. This is another very polished and full sound, and I super love it here because I'm right with you again on her. This one feels honest. This one feels right there. This one feels correct. This one feels like what I expect from her narratively, and I dig it.
yeah, most definitely. And I think the song maybe the video's helping me with it, but I do think it helps with the concept of the album. I feel like the lyrics itself references the film's storyline.
Heard.
So
Yeah, I have to look back on that because, like I said earlier, I wrote out any connection to the concept, but I have to check that back through on this one.
I mean, if they were able to make a video that fit for the song based on the movie, I think there's something there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I actually think the concept's referenced again on the next track, which is I Wish I Hated You. A pretty on the nose title. It's about the ex you wish you hated, but you don't. I mean, very fluttery musical background, which I think really evokes the sci-fi elements of the film. And she even mentions rearranging my memories. That's the movie right there. That's a big part of its plot.
Heard.
Again, I will say I'm glad that we're being honest here. I do think this is one of the more revealing songs here. Musically, though, I don't think it's that memorable. I feel like it's just pretty short and stays in the same place the whole time. And she said that she'll probably never sing this song live, and I'm not mad at her for that. I wouldn't, if I were to go see her live, I'm not sure this would be this. No, I'm not. I know this would not be on my dream Ariana Grande set list. That's for sure. Bit too slight musically.
I'm going to go a little bit more harsh, and I'm going to
Oh,
say that this is an unfinished product. It has some really cool ideas inside of it, musically and narratively, but it never gets its legs on this full contrast of this nice, beautiful arpeggio that's running throughout this track that I dig, and these powerful words over this melodical beautiful composition. It never ever gets its legs where they come together, and this feels like a full thought for me. And I've been on the fence of whether or not that's intentional. Again, I don't like asking myself over and over and over again
no.
and trying to convince myself that it is. This one does not hit. This one I'll say is gun to the head, and I like the arpeggio inside of it, but I just feel like it's the most unfinished track on this
Yeah,
album.
it does have a demo quality to it. I will definitely say that. But we're going to continue with the somewhat softer sound with our penultimate song, which is Imperfect for You. Bit of a play on words there in the title. She actually said this was her favorite song on the album and that it was inspired by Rubber Souls specifically, which I'm going to have to do a re-listen to Rubber Soul, I think, because it's been a while since I've done that one. I'm, I mean, it doesn't reach that level. I can say that for sure, but I don't expect the Beatles when I'm listening to Ariana Grande, so that's okay. But she did perform it on SNL along with We Can't Be Friends, so she clearly really must enjoy this song. Not my favorite on the album, but I do like it. It's got a nice little. It's not as trippy sounding as like some of Rubber Soul, at least, but or well, really as she described, she made it sound more out there than it is. But I do think that it on outside of that, it's a nice ballad, and it does serve as a bit of a turning point and to the conclusion of this album. Like I know I've got my flaws, but I'm I'm for you. I'm imperfect for you. So I do like that.
There's parts of this that I love again. I didn't know the Rubber Souls thing, and I'm trying to. I even clicked the track on, just briefing through it while you were letting us know how you felt there. The only thing that is out there trippy for me, and I like because of its shared quality with the word imperfect, is that minor switch she does, imperfect for you. It doesn't fit the major melody, and it really is a cool contrast there. I dig that. Um, and it's haunting, I guess, over top of it. This one just doesn't feel full for me again, man. It's a great, great out of the first notes. It's an okay, not even great, an okay way to start the way out of the album, and it does its job there. Um, the imperfect for you minor touch is the only redeeming quality from me here on it. I want to love this one, and I keep listening to it because I like that. I really like the way she uses that imperfect for you. I dig how it's very, very, it's haunting. It's a very spooky over top here, but I don't know, man. This track, it doesn't finish out for me.
Yeah. I can see what you're saying. She does actually get to. She did put out a slightly deluxe edition of the album, and one of the extra tracks is an acoustic version of this song, actually,
Ooh, okay.
which I think is pretty neat, as long with an a cappella of True Story, which always cool to hear for her vocals. I'll talk more about the specific remixes at the end of this, but because yeah, in the meantime, we got to talk about our final standard track, which is Ordinary Things, which is a song about just a great relationship. Like, won't be an ordinary thing as long as I'm with you. And this one features Nona, her grandmother, Marjorie Grande, who is now the oldest person to have ever charted on Spotify at the age of 98 because of this song, which I gotta give the song a lot of points just for that, because that's awesome. But it does tie the album up together very nicely, whether she hits the concept all of the time. I do feel that this song manages to do that, and it's a nice sentiment, but I do at the same time I think that having her grandmother here is very intentional, but it's almost as if the song needs it because it's not the most interesting song outside of it, if that makes sense. It's a very nice song. I think it's a great way to end the album, but I do think it needed a 98-year-old lady to push it up a bit.
Yeah, it's cool to see that we get this shared little sample of voices throughout this album, and it really does tie a nice bow on top of this package here. I like the intro into it. But I'm 100% with you. This isn't for really a finished song or a song that hits anywhere near a final track without this powerful advice from Nona on the way out of it. And it's super cool. It fits. But as far as judging the track as a composition here, it's just without that, there's no that's the meat. That's the meat on this one. It's all potatoes without Nona. So thank you, Nona,
Yes,
for and it's good advice for all you out there.
it is. It
It's
is
good
good
advice.
advice. That's what we gotta look for. And I I hope Ariana's followed it. I hope she's found it with SpongeBob. I'm sorry. I'm so I but yeah, so there is a slightly deluxe edition of the album, and there were the two alternate versions, and we got a new version of Supernatural featuring Troy Sivan, which that's definitely for the gays right there. And also, this already did come out, the Yes and remix featuring Mariah Carey. Yeah, that's the one I want to talk about a bit more for me. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Mariah Carey. I've talked about that on this podcast before, and I'm never unhappy to hear her on the song. I do think that the production on both of these songs is a bit of a mess. I can tell that Ariana didn't sing either of them in the same room as her. And there isn't a genuine feel of interplay, and I think that's a bit disappointing in terms of the Mariah remix. But I still really enjoy hearing both of them sing together. And I do think Mariah sounds good on her own, despite the lack of interplay. It's just better production choices could have been made there, I think. But I still enjoy the song a lot, and I love Mariah. So,
Yeah, damn, I didn't even know about that one. But I'm gonna go check it out. It stinks to hear that it doesn't sound like they're in the same room, but that's a cool pairing that I think would work.
oh yeah,
So
it still works. We gotta keep it real here on Turntables and Tea.
I mean, it was released how many days ago? 3 days ago? When was this?
No, the remix came out a bit before the album.
Oh,
I think it was a bit of it definitely was an attempt, I think, helped Yes and on the charts. I don't think it really worked, unfortunately, but I enjoyed it at least. So,
heard
and
that.
we'll see with the Supernatural one. That's not going to get as much attention because, again, Troy Sivan is a openly gay artist, so it's definitely for a specific audience that she's going for there. But that's still a really cool song on the album either way, but just again doesn't sound like they were in the same room at all.
Oh, that
Yeah.
stinks.
That did just come out. But yeah, now we're at the end of Eternal Sunshine, Ariana Grande's first album in almost 4 years. What is your grade for this album?
Ariana Grande, Eternal Sunshine. This was a neat exercise in criticism here because my first listen through this album, I was 100% against it. Against it, not in a stance of I don't like Ariana Grande, I don't like what this narrative is talking about. More so, I really found myself not having any musical fun, any real listening fun throughout, with the exception of one or two tracks. Going back and really getting down on this one, I've found a lot more to like without having to try, which I love about this album. But in its entirety, I still feel that it lacks a lot in the first third of the album musically and thought process and in new ideas, whether intentional or not. Unfortunately, for me as a listener, it's served as almost a doldrum inside of the first third of the album. And there are a lot of places on this album where I don't feel that the production or the realization of the track is finished and polished enough to really be on this album. Unfortunately, there are beautiful shining spots in here, and of course she's a great singer and vocalist, so there's really some high moments here, but for me the lows outweigh the high, unfortunately, and I'm coming at this with a very giving C plus. I will straight say right now that there is a new beef in town, and that is me and Rolling Stones, because this is another 5-star review on this album. I'm calling you out, Rolling Stones. I apologize to Ariana if she thinks that this is a little bit too critical on this album, but I'm calling you out, Rolling Stones. This is not a 5-star album. I'm pissed about it. I'm pissed about it. Don't go throwing 5 stars on random shit anymore. Not that this is a random shit. What I'm saying is don't go throwing 5 stars like that, Rolling Stones. You heard me. You heard me, Rolling Stones.
You're not wrong about that. I would not call it a 5-star or an instant classic. Realistically, I don't think she has ever put out a 5-star album. I do like her, but the closest she's gotten closer to it than this. I'm going to give it a solid B. The songs that I do like, I really like. There's some good but not great here, but I can give credit for that as well. There's nothing here that I think sucks, so I'm going to give it a solid B, and I'm curious to see where the rest of this era goes. I mean, it might be kind of quick with Wicked coming out, but it's definitely not as good as Sweetener or Thank You Next. If you're saying it's her best, you need to go back and re-listen to those albums, I'm afraid, because those were all, even if not every song on those hit, it was all very interesting at the very least. I mean,
I'm right with you. It was so hard for me to keep this all the way to the end, but that's the reason I went back and did a discography run on her, is because I was really left with not much through the first listen, and I had to be like, all right, time out. I don't know her catalog as well as other catalogs. I need to go through here, and there's no way you can say that this is instant classic 5-star listening to her other stuff, and I mean that in the highest compliment here. Yeah,
I'm not, of course your favorite's probably Sweetener, because Pharrell's all over that one.
I enjoy that album. I think that's might be that for me. I think that's like the height of her sound.
I think so too.
I don't think we've gone anywhere above that as far as compositions fully realized and being on point. I'm not here to run anybody through the mud. I'm just saying critically, I think that musically is the best she's given me so far. That's where I'll put it. My opinion is that's the best she's given me so far.
I mean, I'm with you on that. It's definitely a step up from Positions for me, so I am happy about that. Yeah, even if I'm not quite as in love with her as I was in 2018 and 2019, but I'm glad that she's back. I think pop music could always use some Ariana Grande. Favorite song on the album?
Supernatural. I love it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I said it before. I love it.
I'm with We Can't Be Friends. That's a
good track.
Great single choice. I hope it's a huge hit. I hope it's a huge hit. But there we have it, our first in a string of new releases, and now we'll be going to one of our Turntables and Tea Hall of Famers, Justin Timberlake. He's putting out a new album, Everything I Thought It Was, and it's going to be long. There's 18 tracks on it, including one featuring NSYNC. So there is...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and he's been posting some snippets online, and let's see what happens. I'm definitely curious to see where he goes from what this will be. I definitely am, especially he's another one who's had a turbulent past few years in the media, and it's his first album in 6 years. So I'm curious to hear what he's got to say. That's for sure.
I love these new releases. If you don't know this about me, I like to keep myself in the dark going in. I will do another call out to a Hall of Famer. We're going to be going through this with a fine tooth comb. So just be ready, baby. Be ready. That's my
Yeah.
dog. I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
I'm smiling ear to ear right now, but don't let me down.
Yeah, we hold him to a high standard. That's because we know what he is capable of.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
indeed.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that one, and also follow us on social media right below. Subscribe wherever you're listening to us. Leave us a nice review. That would be appreciated. And until next week, don't be too selfish to listen to the next episode of Turntables and Tea. Take care of yourselves until then.
Peace.